The story takes place the start of summer 2009. The rising star Victor Ortiz was stepping up and facing contender Marcos Maidana for the WBA interim junior welterweight title. Ortiz was ranked number 3 and Maidana was ranked number 2 by the WBA. Maidana at that time was not known among casual audiences, but by hardcore fight fans that remembered his previous fight. Maidana's only blemish on his resume was 4 months earlier against Andreas Kotelnik for the WBA junior welterweight title in Germany. Maidana, who clearly won against Kotelnik, was robbed in the scorecards. Cited by HBO, he threw well over 1,200 punches and effectively landed on Kotelnik. With the robbery and in a position to fight again for the title, his plans was he was not going to allow the judges to decide the outcome. What Maidana did not see coming was Ortiz starting as fast as he was. Maidana was dropped in the second half of the first round. Little Ortiz knew it was more of a flash knockdown, and Maidana was perfectly fine. Ortiz rushed in and got hit with a shot he did not see coming. Just seconds after the fight resumed, Ortiz would survive the round and rally back in the second to drop Maidana for the second time in the fight. This time, Maidana was affected by the shot. Despite getting up and walking to the corner, he took a quick knee to regroup his legs. When Maidana was down, Stewart stated inaccurately that Maidana was motioning to quit, which clearly he was not.
I think that's it. It looks like his bad. He quit.
Ortiz would finish the round off big to drop Maidana for the third time. This would come at a price because Ortiz used up so much energy that round, failing to get Marcos out of there. The third round, Ortiz's shots did not have the same effect on Maidana as it did in the first 2 rounds. As Maidana is recovering round by round, he is picking up his punch count and becoming more and more offensive as Ortiz is starting to slow down. The end of the 5th round was a major turning point in the fight as an exhausted Ortiz gets nailed by a perfect Maidana shot. Maidana would follow up and drop Ortiz at the beginning of the 6th. Out of exhaustion and saving himself from further punishment, Ortiz will retire from the fight. Just moments later, the following statements from Ortiz in the post-fight interview would almost ruin his marketability.
I was hurt, I'm not gonna go out on my back. I'm not gonna lay down for nobody, I'm gonna stop while I'm ahead, and that way I can speak well when I'm older, I'm young, but I don't think I deserve to be, getting beat up like this. So I have a lot of thinking to do.
Causing outrage among desensitized fight fans. Boxing is a worldwide sport, and each country's boxing scene's culture can be the same, different, and completely unique from the other. In America and some countries in the Western Hemisphere, Ortiz's act is completely frowned upon, almost more or equally as frowned upon as taking performance-enhancing drugs, which creates a toxic environment for the fighter. If a fighter can't continue and any further punishment can lead to permanent damage, that fighter will do as much as they can to not be labeled a quitter, which is the worst thing to call a fighter.
Knowing my brother, he would have never quit.
Suddenly the chin could still take the punches, but the heart could not.
There wasn't an ounce of energy left in him. How can anybody say that he quit? That's shocking. It almost makes me want to cry, that. Honestly.
Ortiz was starting to really get beat up. He knew if he took any further punishment, it may ruin his career. So he made the wise decision and retired from the fight to fight another day. As Ortiz is on the path to rebuilding his name, Mayweather is in training camp for his comeback fight against lightweight champion Juan Manuel Marquez for July 18th.
Back to work.
Just weeks before the fight took place, Mayweather would sustain a rib injury and the fight was postponed and rescheduled for September 19th. He'll come back into training in July, but wore a protective brace around his midsection to start training camp.
We don't get tired. We get hungry.
There was some pre-fight drama regarding the weight. Mayweather was supposed to come in on the agreed weight limit of 144 pounds. Mayweather and his team confronted Golden Boy to change it to 147, which they and Marquez agreed on. But this was at the last minute on Wednesday, which it was due that day. The Vegas commissioner granted Mayweather some leniency and gave him till Thursday to have things filled out for him. Mayweather and his team did not provide and file the new weight agreement till Friday of the weigh-in, which it left the commission incredibly irritated. The commission decided to be generous and accept it, despite it being incredibly late, granting the fight to be at the 147 limit. If not, Floyd would have been penalized $300,000. The money would have been given to the commission and Team Marquez. Floyd's comeback would be a success, as he showed no apparent rust against Marquez, dominating him the entire fight, even knocking him down in the second round. He was absolutely sharp that night. Falling after the fight, Floyd, without his knowledge, was asked about a Mosley fight, with Mosley entering the ring to call him out. Despite this doing well for selling the fight, Floyd did not like this one bit, as seen from 24/7 B-roll cameras. They did not know cameras were rolling as Al Heyman can be seen in frame.
Real disrespectful, Al. They was bogus as hell. I'm doing my interview. They bringing everybody on. They bringing Shane Mosley in. When I hopped in that one time to do my interview, man.
Heyman does not allow media to shoot him at events. The pound-for-pound star is back. The Marquez fight raking in $55.6 million in overall revenue. Floyd is now looking at who can be his next opponent. That fighter who was being groomed to be Floyd's new opponent was WBC champion Andre Berto, if he got past Shane Mosley. Berto was set to fight Shane Mosley in a WBC-WBA unification match January 30th, 2010. On January 15th, absolutely horrific events would take place in Andre Berto's homeland of Haiti. He'll be hit by a 3.4 magnitude earthquake. Berto, who has family members in Haiti, flew in as soon as he could to provide aid. On January 19th, the fight to this unification was ultimately cancelled. Mayweather, who wanted a unification, and his handlers hoping it would be a fight with Berto, who was becoming a star at welterweight, would bring in big numbers. But Mosley was still the best guaranteed option for a big pay-per-view, since he was a star earlier in the 2000s and just came off a huge performance against Antonio Margarito for the title. Mayweather was ranked number 3 at welterweight, and Mosley was ranked just above him at number 2. The start of the fight, a lot of nervous energy by both guys. Mayweather starting the fight off unusually slow. Mosley will rake in the first round, and then the second, which was huge. He will be the first guy to legitimately hurt Floyd. Floyd will recover and completely take over the fight, winning virtually every round after that to beat Mosley by a wide unanimous decision. The fight was a huge success, 1.4 million pay-per-view buys, generating $78.3 million in revenue. So you are probably realizing why I haven't talked about Manny Pacquiao. If you go back to my previous video of the tale of De La Hoya Mayweather, I discussed how Floyd's relationship ended with Bob Arum. Due to their relationship, they did attempt to make a fight happen in 2010, but it just couldn't be made at that point due to personal politics. Mayweather is waiting for the beginning of next year to see how things play out with setting up a Berto fight. Meanwhile, Ortiz has raked up 5 fights, beating Antonio Diaz, Nate Campbell, and having a 10-round majority decision draw against Lamont Peterson, in which Ortiz scored 2 knockdowns early in the fight. So Ortiz was fighting slightly above the junior welterweight limit, excluding the Campbell fight, making these matchups welterweight fights. Ortiz was ranked number 5 by the WBC. Berto's mandatory opponent was Salak Aydin of Turkey. He made Aydin to be a step aside for his fight with Freddie Hernandez in late 2010. Aydin is the mandatory, but Floyd Mayweather is the WBC champion emeritus. When he retired from boxing, he was given that status. When a fighter decides to come back when they feel ready, or in this case, Floyd was waiting till it was monetarily ready, he can become the immediate mandatory, and the champion has to face him. For the champion, there's no getting around it. Another example of a fighter exercising that right as champion emeritus is Vitaly Klitschko. He was forced to retire due to an injury. He came back to boxing 4 years later. Since he was 100% ready, his first fight back in 4 years, he faces Samuel Peter for the WBC heavyweight title. Pretty cool rule, I must say. So since Mayweather was 100% ready to fight for the WBC title, the winner of Berto Ortiz would be Mayweather's next opponent, preferably a Berto fight since that was a guaranteed hit. Undefeated champion, entertaining TV fighter who has made several defenses. A fight with Ortiz could potentially be a tough sell. Ortiz enters the fight as a 3-1 underdog. The fight started off all Ortiz, dropping Berto in the first round.
Berto staggered again.
Berto would rally back and drop Ortiz in the next round. Ortiz continued to power through in the third and really put it on Berto in the fourth. In the sixth round, as the tides to be all in Ortiz's favor, Berto finally comes back and drops Ortiz with a perfect shot, this time actually doing damage to Ortiz. Ortiz would get up and be in survival mode. The ref was just about to stop the fight till Ortiz landed a perfect counter and dropped Berto in the final 10 seconds. This was at the time when Al Heyman still attended boxing matches in the front row. You can see him just getting ready to celebrate, then to fall up and sit down when Berto was dropped. Ortiz showed true grit in this fight and proved to the critics that he has what it takes to become a champion as he continued to fight on and earn the upset decision against Berto. Mayweather Ortiz is on. Like I stated earlier, this fight was a tough sell. The promotion campaign to make a 600 to 700,000 pay-per-view buy matchup into a 1 million pay-per-view buy matchup was a task, and what is the perfect platform to achieve such a task?
We on 24/7 right now. You tell me one athlete right now that's been dominating the game for 16 years straight without a loss. Tell me one. Tell me just one. That ends it all, then I'm gone.
They took a guy who some may have heard of, some who did and didn't care about the matchup, from episode 1, and by the end of episode 4, you were emotionally involved with this matchup and willing to shell out the money for this fight because you were convinced that Ortiz has a chance to beat this guy. Episode 1 making many headlines because of the fallout with Floyd and his dad in the closing sequence of the episode. Viewers at home are coming to believe that this may be a distraction to Floyd, thus giving more of a chance for Ortiz to win. To add on to the narrative, it showed Ortiz having the training camp of his life. He was the young, hungry champion. Not only that, Ortiz was a southpaw. Mayweather had not faced one since 2006 when he fought Zab Judah. And the weight. Ortiz in his fight with Berto rehydrated to 161 pounds, when weighing in at 146, a pound below the welterweight limit. So a lot of small details were being brought up to build up that Ortiz was a live underdog, sitting at 3.5 to 1.
See that, Floyd? Uh-oh, somebody's in trouble.
To start fight week off, crowds in the masses showed up to the Fighter Grand arrivals at the MGM Grand. The next day, at the final press conference, both guys share a bit of entertainment.
A little bit of nervousness around this area. Oh, this little section right here. And I'm gonna teach you what it feels like to have that one on your record, bro. Saturday night, I won't hold my hands up. We'll put you in the ass. You ain't gotta introduce me.
Despite Floyd being portrayed the cocky villain in all the episodes leading up to the fourth, his speech at the final press conference was more humble and less brash than Ortiz.
The fighter know, once you've been at this level for so long, you know, I'm never nervous, never worried about nothing. I believe in my skills. I believe in my talent. If no one believes in Floyd Mayweather, I believe in me. All work is easy work. 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 All work is easy work.
Great show up at the weigh-in, and many arriving hours early before gates opened to get a seat. A total 4,000 attendees. Floyd, as ballin' as possible, him and his entourage arrived in a convoy of Maybachs. Ortiz was the first to step up to the scale. He weighed in at the welterweight limit of 147 pounds. Floyd came in at 146.5 pounds. Both guys in incredible shape. The face-off, both are going at it. It lasted surprisingly longer than most face-offs I've seen, making it one of the more exciting weigh-ins. Since both fighters are using the same glove brand, during the commission inspection process and the choosing of the gloves, this process went by nice and smooth. Both fighters arrived early at 6 p.m. and made their way to their locker rooms. Mayweather camp told Ortiz camp they will supervise Ortiz's hand wraps at 6:30. They never showed up, and by 6:45, by the approval of the commission, Ortiz began to wrap. Ellerby arrived shortly after. One hand was nearly complete. Leonard, finding out that the hand wrapping was already beginning, demanded to the commission officer that Ortiz should redo the wraps in his presence.
Turn the wraps into the WBC after the fight anyway, they test them. Okay, well, that's not my concern. You ain't got to tell me about the.
I understand.
I think I've been in this ball game a little longer than you have. I think we'd have done this a time or two more than you have. Okay.
Moments later, that was granted, and Team Ortiz had to redo the hand wraps.
I'm gonna be respectful to you, and I expect the same. And I expect the same. I expect the same in return. All I'm saying is that I wasn't here to witness the rap.
Okay, let us move.
And what Roger said, Roger's not here.
We're good.
But it's what I'm saying.
By 7:30, both guys began final preparations and started to warm up, the venue quickly filling up as the main event is approaching.
Be careful with the headbutts inside being your southpaw. You guys gotta be closer to the axles. Be careful with the heads inside.
Ortiz came out first and savored no time with his entrance. Mayweather coming out to the ring with 50 Cent performing. In an unprecedented order, Michael Buffer did not say his famous phrase till after both fighters were announced and the referee's fighter instructions. The weight of both fighters on fight day is quite eye-catching. Floyd Mayweather only rehydrated to 150 pounds. 3.5 pounds more than what he weighed in 24 hours ago. Ortiz rehydrated to an astonishing 164 pounds after weighing in at the welterweight limit of 147. Round 1, Floyd started off quickly to establish an early rhythm, not particularly landing, but throwing range-finding shots that will eventually be effective later in the round and rounds to come. Ortiz having some moments early as well, mixing up to the body and head. Watching this fight live, this may completely fly over one's radar, but Ortiz is blatantly throwing headbutts right at the start of the first round. It's not like a subtle headbutt where one is rushing in quickly to get in close to smother a shot and prevent being hit. This is a telegraphed butt. Within a 20-second duration, Ortiz attempted twice, purposely. After the second failed butt, it caught Joe Cortez's attention, where he gave Ortiz a warning. This was rather an even round, but I would have to score it for Floyd, as his right hand leads that landed at a higher percentage, landed more effectively, and had more of an impact than Ortiz's shots. Both fighters almost identically threw the same amount of punches in the first. Despite the major weight disadvantage, Mayweather is starting round 2 off, pressing the fight and coming forward to Ortiz to establish respect and take away Ortiz's confidence. So far in round 2, Floyd is the one landing and completely neutralizing Ortiz's offense, despite the fight being more in a phone booth. You would think Floyd is the one with the massive weight advantage over Ortiz. Mayweather is in complete control of the round. Victor is throwing, but they are missing wide or landing on the guard ineffectively. Coming into the first minute mark, Floyd is really starting to pick Ortiz apart. Ortiz finally gets Floyd on the ropes and scores a little bit, and then we will see some more blatant headbutts by Ortiz. I counted about 3 of them. After the third blatant headbutt, Ortiz rubs his head into Mayweather's face. The purpose of that, to rub his face in that fashion, is to create abrasions. These weaken the skin, which can lead to potential cuts. Despite the obvious foul committed, Mayweather remains silent and does not protest to Cortez. The second round is not even over yet. We are approaching the 26-second mark. Ortiz throws another headbutt, misses, then throws a second one, which lands on Mayweather. Floyd will clearly win round 3. Ortiz will start the round on a positive note, landing a hard left lead to the body. Floyd, mainly stalking Ortiz, is just circling the ring, would land his first effective shot of the round with a perfect counter check hook. Later in the second half, Floyd would land a beautiful counter on Ortiz to be up in the round. Floyd would take over the round, shutting Ortiz out to win big. Round 3, Floyd would start the round off immediately on the offensive, landing beautifully. 30 seconds of unanswered shots from Floyd. Shortly after that, Ortiz would get Mayweather on the ropes, and in between the clinch, Ortiz is once again purposely throwing headbutts. After 2 that landed, and 1 that came off the least subtle, that once again caught Joe Cortez's attention, and he let Ortiz off with another warning. Mayweather, unbothered, will go on to land a snapping check hook on Ortiz. After the 2-minute marker, Victor would land his first effective combination of the fight. Once again on the ropes, and in a clinch, Ortiz attempts to headbutt Floyd.
Ortiz's greater strength showing up when they go to the ropes.
Let's go, watch the heads.
Fast forward to the final 30 seconds. Ortiz finally cracks through Floyd once again, and this time he's in a position to let his hands go and win the round big. Instead of continuing to let his hands go, he throws the biggest headbutt of the fight. This time it does damage, completely splitting under Floyd's lip. Cortez calls time to the fight, prepping to penalize Ortiz. Ortiz immediately being apologetic for something he's been doing the whole fight, going as far as kissing Mayweather, but Floyd is not having it. Now you have to really pay attention here. After Cortez gives Ortiz his final warnings, Cortez here is multitasking. He makes the hand gesture for the fight to resume and yells out, "Let's go." The fight is in play and he is motioning to the timekeeper to check with them that they are resuming the time. Ortiz, being apologetic once again, goes in for a hug. Again, the fight is in play. Mayweather can either accept the apology and let the fight resume or get to fighting because the fight is in play. Protect yourself at all times. Floyd really took some time to think this one out. He felt like he was disrespected enough in this fight. He set his feet and put all of his weight, throwing a shot right on the nerve of the jaw to stun him. And then the final shot, which he truly loaded up, landed perfectly on the bottom of the chin. And that is all she wrote.
Ortiz was apologizing, and Mayweather was punching.
There is no getting up from that, and Floyd Mayweather wins by knockout. With the HBO commentary of the fight, the actions Ortiz made leading to the knockout will go overlooked among live TV audiences. So it will be very easy for Ortiz to play the victim out of this, and Floyd will be made once again the villain. In Ortiz's interview, he plays it off completely innocent and naive of the situation. Whatever happens after that is not his fault, but it plays into the narrative that Floyd did him dirty.
I was going back, and then he pushed me a little bit, so I went back and I just cocked back. It looked like I really did it intentionally, but you know, it happens. I even apologized to him.
What also doesn't help is the post-fight interview, which quickly turned ugly for Floyd. In my previous video, I stated how Larry was trying his best to be like Howard Cosell, but Floyd is not the type of guy to take verbal jabs at, like how Howard would always jab Ali and many other boxers.
Holmes wants recognition. That's been his theme. That's been his dream. And he's going to get a chance to fulfill it in just a very few moments when he goes against Leroy Jones, a big, fat, blubbery guy, but who is unbeaten.
This was during a different time where fighters were well aware and prepared to go a verbal round or two against Cosell. This here would end off not well. You can clearly see Larry laughing. I don't think his intentions were meant to be bad, but the execution was way off its mark.
Who's the winner and who's the loser?
Floyd Mayweather is the winner. That tirade at the end, I don't really think I could have kicked his ass 50 years ago, but I would have tried it.
I know that.
A perfect example of a fighter knowing what is going on and is part of it to create attention on a positive note was with him and Bernard Hopkins.
Sound crazy, but I need to have people against me. Not that I want it, but as long as I'm in this business, of the hurt business, I gotta have it, Larry. Sometimes I pick fights, even with you.
Backstage footage gives you a rare look through Mayweather and Al Haymon's perspective of the fight. Mayweather talked about being headbutted a lot. A very rare audio statement of Al Haymon, who is off frame, giving his word on the matter as well.
Hit me with the headbutt and knocked
on purpose. He tried it 2 or 3 times.
He got hit with headbutts. Hit me with the headbutt a couple times.
He lunged himself with his head forward.
Backstage, Ortiz continued to play the victim card and take zero responsibility on playing a huge role in the outcome being the way it is. A team member called out Ortiz and pretty much laid it all out. Despite all of that, Ortiz did not care.
Asshole next time in the ring, right? But you gotta do. Yeah, no. Yo, I was being an asshole until they told me to watch out, man.
At him.
Get him, man. Hey, man. Rely on the ref. Don't rely on me.
Then the truth came out in Seconds Out's Radio Raheem's interview, where he angrily stated he was purposely headbutting Floyd. He blames due to Floyd's elbows, but I did not see any elbows worth noting that can cause one to be throwing potentially career-damaging headbutts. If Ortiz was being hit with elbows, he never brought it up to Cortez when Cortez warned him for headbutts. That is a perfect time to mention one fighter is fouling when you're being called out for a foul as well.
Lands for Ortiz. Berto wobbling again as he goes back against the ropes.
Watch your head coming inside. Watch your head.
Ortiz had a big...
Let's go. Watch your head. Watch your head inside.
Due to that statement, the commission summoned up Ortiz to a hearing. Ortiz had to get his license reinstated, and he was fined $100,000. This fight will go on to earn 1.25 million pay-per-view buys, generating 78.4 million in overall revenue. Mayweather made a guaranteed 25 million, plus a stake in pay-per-view revenue, earning a total $40 million. Ortiz made a humble $2 million. Coming into the new year of 2012, Mayweather fought Miguel Cotto in May for Cotto's junior middleweight title, this being one of Mayweather's toughest and most entertaining fights. Floyd, as clutch as he can be, closed the show in exciting fashion to win by a close unanimous decision. This would be Floyd's final fight on the HBO contract before he would make his historic move to Showtime. The events that take place here would cause a ricochet. Earlier that year, Paul Williams had put up a great performance against Nobuhiro Ishida. He was now chosen to be Canelo's opponent for September. Shortly after Floyd's fight with Cotto, Williams would get into a car accident and be forced to retire from boxing. Victor Ortiz, the next month, was set to fight Andre Berto in a rematch. The winner was set up to fight Canelo in September. This fight was cancelled due to Berto testing positive for a type of steroids. Josejito Lopez became a replacement for Berto, in which he would go on to upset Ortiz in dramatic fashion. With the unfortunate events of Paul Williams, the Ortiz loss, the Berto suspension, and since Canelo did not have to face his mandatory yet due to Lara versus Martirosyan set for November and a title elimination, he has no one to fight for September because Showtime is trying to compete with HBO and their September slate. So Lopez was ultimately named to be Canelo's next opponent for September of that year to compete with HBO's Chavez versus Martinez, which was on the same day at the same time in Las Vegas. One at the Thompson Mack Center and one at the MGM. I think that's pretty much it to wrap things up with this tale. And on top of that, this is the tale of Floyd Mayweather versus Victor Ortiz. I'd like to thank all my patrons who backed me on this project. For more projects like these, be sure to subscribe to the Patreon, like and share to really get this video out there. And if you're new, subscribe. I'm Alpha Sancho, and I'm out.